This is a Renew original recording. Hello and welcome to Season 3 of Believe in People, the British podcast award-winning series exploring addiction, recovery and the stigma that surrounds them. I'm Matthew Butler, your host, or as I like to say, your facilitator. In today's episode of Believe in People, we're bringing you something a little different. For the first time ever, we've recorded the podcast live in front of an audience at the DDN conference, one of the UK's largest events dedicated to drugs, alcohol and recovery. Making her third appearance on our podcast is Michelle Heaton. Now, more than 5 years into her recovery journey, Michelle reflects on addiction, treatment, motherhood, stigma, and the lessons she learnt since getting sober. Then, after our conversation, stay with us for a special Q&A, where members of the audience put their own questions to Michelle, leading to some honest, emotional, and thought-provoking discussions.
Hello, everybody. You all having a good day? Good.
Michelle, obviously, you've been on our series a few times now. This is the third appearance. Mm-hmm. The first time that we spoke, you had 9 months of sobriety under your belt. Second time was 18 months, so there was a little bit of a distance there. And now it's been... How long has it been now?
5 years and 3 months.
5 years and 3 months! Wonderful.
You're making me well up already.
It's a lot of positivity, isn't it?
Oh my God, I cry at everything, but thanks, guys.
I thought the tears would come a little bit later. That's absolutely nice to see. Michelle, there'll be so many... Obviously, we've done this twice before. There'll be so many people here that don't know your story. And I don't want to bring up, like, the old war wounds as such, but can you tell me a little bit about it? Because I think when we first met, my understanding was because you've been in a pop group, because you're a Brit Award winner, you've been in those circles, there's almost this idea or this understanding that celebrities naturally have this party lifestyle where drugs and alcohol play a massive part of it. But at the height of your fame, that wasn't the case for you, was it? It actually came a little bit later. So can you kind of talk us through when it became a problem for you and what the problem was as well?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of alcohol and drugs in pop stardom. I had a great time. I'm not going to lie. It was brilliant. I was 21, I was in a pop group and we travelled the world and it was everything that you imagine it to be. But it was fun, it was harmless. I could put it down at night and get up the next day and go to work and be responsible and continue that, right? And there was no point where I was, I suppose, reliant upon anything other than the music and my career. But I think for me personally, from a very young age, and we hear this all the time with addicts, is like, I felt different. I knew something was going on. Or I had my first sip of alcohol and I arrived, For me, it wasn't alcohol or drugs. It was food. So I had the food noise and I still battle with that today. Food changed the way that I felt about myself. And so I didn't feel good about myself. I still battle with that as well now. And so whenever I felt sad or lonely or depressed or happy or elated or tired, I would turn to food. And that was my first love and hate relationship. And then throughout my life, that got replaced with slimming pills because then I was trying to counteract the damage I did with food. And then, so that came on board and then it was binge eating and diet pills. And then there was speed because that gave me a bit of both. And then there was speed and then there was alcohol. And so looking back, there's always been an addictive behaviour with anything that could change the way that I feel about myself. And I didn't know how to live life without having to change the way I felt because I felt so insecure. This is way before being in a pop band, that just aspirated that feeling of insecurity for me, being, popular and known and the press writing about me and people recognising me, like all of those thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I can't sing as good as the other girls. All of those came, more frequently that then I turned to other things to escape. About 12 years ago, I had to have a total hysterectomy and a double mastectomy and reconstruction because I have the BRCA2 cancer gene. And now I can see a real relation between having those operations, going into menopause very early and having a disconnect with myself, even more than what I was already suffering with. I turned to what was then working for me, which was drink and drugs. And my relationship with drink and drugs was the only way that I felt normal. And so without it, I'd feel sad, lonely, depressed. I couldn't relate to my peers who weren't going through menopause, who were still going out and partying and doing all of that. But then, coming home and being a responsible parent, I soon found out that I had no off switch. I suppose for many years, I thought that was normal. I thought everybody else was like me. I thought surely they carry on the party when they go home as well, or do it in isolation. And I convinced myself for so long that this was, okay, that it was fine. And then came the hospital stays, and I had sclerosis of the liver, and my pancreas still doesn't work now, and all of those, yaks that come, if I end up in hospital, I'll stop. Well, that didn't make me stop, because I would leave a hospital and I'd go straight to the off license and get another litre of vodka. If I got caught with my cocaine from my husband, then I'll stop. Well, that happened and it didn't stop. It just makes you want more and manipulate and do what you can to get that thing. And I did want to stop a few times. But then when I tried, I found I couldn't. And being in the public eye, I was so scared of people finding out this is what I do. So I suppose I tried to hide it more, manipulate more. And that's when it became really dark.
I think the interesting thing there is, from someone without that perspective, when you say, if this sent me to hospital, I would stop. If my husband caught me with this, I would stop. Why? And there'll be so many people in the audience today that are in recovery that will understand why that wasn't enough to stop. But for someone without that experience, that would make me think, right, I've got to sort my shit out now.
Yeah, sure.
How come that wasn't enough? How come it didn't stop you from continuing to follow that pattern of behaviour?
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously, like, my friends and my family would pose that question: why can't you just stop? You just came out of hospital. My kids are crying that I've not been able to take them to school yet again because I'm too drunk to get in the car, or they've woke up and they come downstairs and I'm laid out on the sofa with a bottle of wine poured away by the side of me, or my husband's come downstairs and found residue. All of those things. Of course, a normal person would go, why can't you just stop? And then you start to question yourself, why can't I just stop? I don't get it. Why can't I just stop all of these things? And nothing could curtail me from getting what I needed, because it wasn't just about, like, okay, these things give me pleasure. Like, that shifted quite quickly. It was that I needed these things to breathe. Like, if I woke up, sometimes I wouldn't go to bed, obviously. Like, I woke up in the morning, if I didn't have a swig of vodka, I couldn't cope. Like, my body shut down, and obviously I didn't know it was shutting down, but you just feel like you need that to level yourself out. Like, all of the things and the knowledge that I've gained through getting sober and attending things like this and speaking to fellows, like, I know that now. I know my body was shutting down, and I know about, stopping immediately can cause death and suffering, and I know all that now. But at the time, why can't you just stop? It just makes you then punish yourself more. So then drink and drugs was also a punishment, because I didn't feel like I deserved help, because I was such a bad mum. I was such a bad wife. I would do incoherent things that no mum, self-respecting mum or adult should really do. So then I would do it because it would punish me. Oh, well, I might as well die. And I think one of the hardest things, one of the darkest places that I was at was when I was at peace with the fact that I was going to die. I don't know if that's relatable for anybody here.
I was just about to ask, is that like a relatable?
That's a weird thing to say.
People, yeah, I can see a lot of people nodding. Yeah. Okay.
But like, isn't that just fucking heartbreaking? That so many of you relate to that. Isn't that awful? That we were at peace, that we were going to die, and that was okay with us. because we couldn't see any way out. We didn't feel like we deserved help. We didn't know there was help out there. We didn't know how to ask for it. We were shamed. We couldn't stop and didn't know why. And so it was easier to just go, okay, well, if this is my life, then that's it. Then I'm okay with that. And that's fucking awful. And I suppose, you know, my fellows out there relating to that, it's heartbreaking to see how many of you relate to that.
Yeah, one of the things that interests me, obviously, when you're out at that point is, like, because alcohol is so accessible, I've met people who are experiencing alcohol withdrawal, but don't realise that they've experienced withdrawal from alcohol. When was the first time you experienced, like, withdrawal from these substances? And was you aware at the time of when you was experiencing that this was because you wasn't drinking in the way that your body needed you to drink?
No, I don't think there was a clock on, you know, to be honest. I think it just became an habitual habit that turned into addiction. And I don't know when that happened. You know, it's a very grey area. You know, I can't say, right, okay, so it was 6 months into drinking every day that then I had to drink. I actually have no idea.
Was it a scary moment when you realised that you have to have this just to feel like a sense of normalcy in your body?
I think for me it was, you see, I would never have said I was a coke addict. It was, I could not admit that, and I thought I wasn't. I thought I did it now and again. It was such a lie. I do it now and again. It's like, oh, 5 packets for 4, you know. And there's always an excuse, and I would be very clever at just having a little bit at a time, so that I didn't open everything at once. And but then, of course, when it's dry, then I go and get some more. And it was every day, you know. And I think when I went on holidays with the family, and I couldn't get what I wanted, and I was so scared about trying to find it, that the obsession was so on me when I was away, when I didn't have it. It was like I had it. And so so my behaviour was despicable, because I didn't have that substance to level me out. And so I would turn to more alcohol and the tequila and stuff I would never usually drink, and which meant that I was planning my pickup as soon as I landed, you know, whatever I could do to manipulate it. And obviously you kind of think, oh, this isn't normal, but you don't think. You're like, you don't give yourself a speaking to and go, right, Michelle, you know, like if you're an addict like me, you don't anyway. You know, you don't go at any point and go, right, maybe I need to stop. So let's stop for a while, because maybe you say that once and then within half an hour you're calling in. Like I remember many times flushing it away, swearing it off, like the night off, and I'd be like, right, this what am I doing? I'm actually dying. I've got blood coming out my nose. I've got, you know, my skin's translucent, you know, when you see your veins and you'd be scratching and you're itchy, and it's all of that, and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. And then as soon as you get rid of it, you're calling it back in, or you're going back to the off license. Like it's on you so much that you can't breathe without it. And that's the only way I can kind of describe how I felt.
It's obviously it's been, you know, 5 years now, but what was one of the things that we like to explore is that some people call it the light bulb moment, some people call it a rock bottom moment, where things, you know, can't possibly get any worse. I have to make those changes. You've just said then there was times when you flushed it away but went back to it. Was there a specific moment where it was like, right, I have to stop this now, I have to make some changes? And if so, what was it?
I think for about 2 years before getting help, I was in that mind frame, but I didn't know how to get to the point of help. And I was so shameful of admitting it. I'm worried about losing my career, my family, and what that looked like, because there's obviously a stigma, right, until you come in recovery. And you assume that it's the worst thing in the world and that no one's ever going to love you or trust you again and you're going to lose everything and you know, you convince yourself you're not really an addict because you don't look like an addict. I mean, if you look around this room, there's nobody that looks like an addict. You know, we all look relatively normal.
Isn't there? Yeah, I get
yeah,
what
but
you're
there's a
saying,
massive stigma and so you convince yourself that you're not one of them. And I think so for 2 years, I definitely felt like I wanted to stop or that I needed to stop but couldn't. And it was, for me, I was actually with Katie Price, and she had just came out of rehab and she was sober. So Katie sober is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And you're like, you know, and I'm like, I went to meet her. She shows up. She has a tendency not to show up to things. So I was pleasantly surprised she showed up. So I call this my God moment. I'm not religious, but this is my definite higher power God moment because she was everything I needed to be at that moment in time. And so I suppose it took me being with somebody who was like me, who then wasn't using or drinking like me, for me to recognize that maybe I could do that. And all this help was there before. Like my husband tried to stage an intervention, my manager tried to get me into rehab, and all of this help was there, but I didn't feel I needed it, or I would talk my way out of it and convince them I'd try and get better without it until I was presented with somebody who had it and who was like me. And then I was able to go, what did you do? And I listened. And that was my journey of recovery.
That's the power of visible recovery, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so important and to have, especially, I think the thing that I love is going into areas, and Cara Cox, who was here earlier, she told me something really poignant before. She said in her, within Chase Recovery, she said sometimes, she said, even though she's got years of sobriety under her belt, for the person who's coming through the door the first time, it's better to speak to someone who's only maybe got 3 months under the belt, rather than someone like seasoned, seasoned in their recovery, because they can relate to it more so. And I think that's quite point that you spoke to Kate, because she was fresh out of, because then it's tangible, isn't it? You can actually see it and you think, well, actually, I saw you only a couple of months ago as well, when you was in that place. So to see it, because if someone says, oh, I've got, 15 years, you're like, I'm never going to get that.
Yeah, it feels
unattainable. Unobtainable.
Yeah, sure.
That's it. So
I mean, if somebody had told me I was going to be 5 years back then, I would have laughed at them. I remember my husband, who doesn't drink at all, at the very beginning, he's like, if you stay sober for 6 months, we'll go out and you can have a glass of wine. And I'm like, yeah, great, okay. And then you soon realise, oh, this is forever.
Yeah.
But forever seems long, like even now when I think about the future, or I think about my daughter's wedding or my son's wedding and think about those moments in time, I'm like, oh, how am I going to feel then? And I don't know. But I know for today, and then we say keep it in today, whatever, is that I'm okay and I don't need to drink today. And that's where I kind of keep it. Anything else, I don't need to worry about it. It's okay, it'll be all right.
Well, was that a scary prospect then? Because the way you just said about your husband, then he was almost treating it like dry January, just almost like he didn't understand the extent of the problem,
no.
Is it a scary prospect to think I will never be able to drink normally again? Like, how hard was that to adjust to?
I think for me, if somebody could convince me and have evidence that I could drink like a normal person, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't do it. I loved alcohol. I loved it. I loved the social aspects. I loved drinking it. I loved the taste of it. But those fond memories of euphoria were way before, I got help. Like we're talking 10, 20 years ago. But that's what I can remember, right? And we're very quick, our minds work very differently when we're addicts, and it's very quickly reminding us those wonderful moments that we then, wouldn't it be lovely if I just had that glass of wine when I had my steak? And yeah, it would be, but fuck, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And as long as I continue to remind myself, and I don't mean by battering myself with old photos every day, like I'm not a big fan of that at all. I do meetings. I do take people through sponsorship. But for me, as long as I remain active in recovery, what I mean by that is something like this, going to events like this, talking to somebody, listening to podcasts, oh my God, even watching A Star is Born, for fuck's sake. I remember when I watched that film and I was like massively into it. And I remember thinking, God, I'm fucking him.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wish I was fucking him, but I wasn't fucking him. My husband, I like that one. But like, I'm him, and I'm sat there in the cinema, and I remember like going really small in my seat and thinking, oh my God, like that is me. And oh yeah, it was a great film. Thinking, oh my God. But whatever can, reminds me that I'm not normal. That I know what would happen because I know how I am with alcohol. Like, I cannot put it down. I go to restaurants now, and I'm good with going out and being around it. I don't tend to make a habit of it, but I'm good with it. But I remember, I see somebody across the table with a glass of wine, and it's there for an hour. And they're still like on their third sip, and it's just sat there, and I'm like, they're not normal. Like what like, or they leave half a bottle of wine and just, oh, it's all right, and I'm like, no, oh my God, like that to me is not normal, which makes me know that I can't drink.
I get that. Yeah, it's good to kind of have that reminder without having to, be put in like a way where it is almost risky to you. And that ties me to my next question, actually, because I want to know what's changed most about the way that you understand recovery today. Because again, 9 months, 18 months, 5 years and 3 months, big differences each time. And I noticed the second time we spoke to you, even that additional 9 months, there was a lot of changes. So what has changed the most in the way that you understand recovery today, in terms of a lot of maybe the do's and don'ts that you was given at the beginning to now?
Yeah. I think it was definitely important for me not to pressure myself to go out to places. I suppose being in the career that I am constantly around alcohol and or drugs, and that was imperative for me to kind of navigate straight away because I had to work. So Jess and Kel from the group are not like me, and they were, my shields, and they made sure that there wasn't alcohol in our dressing rooms and made those informed decisions for me without making me feel stupid or being the one. So I think core group of friends that understand what's going on or who are willing to hear what's going on is really important. Friend groups, oh my God, like I thought these birds that I was hanging out with down the road were my best mates, and they just disappeared when I went to rehab. Like they went running, and I still haven't really heard from them today. They never once called me up to see how I was doing. Obviously, I think part of it is their self-reflection on themselves, knowing what they are and what they are doing. Maybe they don't want to admit what they're doing, or maybe there's a part of guilt there. But unfortunately, or fortunately for me, they haven't entered my life again, and that's okay. I found it hard to begin with. I felt really let down by what I would have called really good friends. But I have to understand that that's for a reason now, because they weren't necessarily good for me.
I think that is one of the things that people often say is one of the harder parts of recovery, is that you have to obviously change so much about yourself, but it's your social situation and your circumstances. People that you thought were friends aren't friends. How difficult was that for you? Obviously you've got your bandmates who've been supportive. How difficult was that to create almost like that new friendship group and that new support group? Did you find that in the fellowship?
Yeah, I've definitely got a core group of women from the fellowship that I have, and that's great. And they're my support system when I want to talk about something that maybe one of my best mates wouldn't understand. But I do keep things quite separate. I don't necessarily want recovery to be my whole life.
Yeah,
I don't want it to define me, but I need it. I know I need it. I feel like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I've seen too many times women dropping out of their recovery circle and then coming back. And I don't want that to be my narrative. But, for me, I do keep that separate to like my mates and who I do go out with, and I might meet them down the pub for a meal and they drink, and I'm good with that. I don't have any issue with that, but it wasn't like that at the beginning. I just think you have to know really why do you need to go out? What is the reason? Do you have to be there? And the power of saying no is so good. Like, it makes you feel so strong. I would never say no to anything. I would have said yes to everything. And just saying no, and if there's a silence, you don't have to fill it. like, so I'm so used to giving excuses, like, no, because blah, blah. Oh, okay, then I'll try and make it. Like whatever. Like, it's just, no, I'm sorry, I don't fancy that. Or no, I'm busy. Nobody needs an excuse.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful now in recovery. So I do ask myself, do I want to go? Do I need to go? What is my reason? And if there's none of those three questions good enough, then I say no.
No.
Yeah.
One of the things we've talked about recently is how women recover differently. Although women make up a third of people in treatment in England, research suggests they often face additional barriers to accessing and staying in treatment. What do you think makes recovery different for women?
I think diagnosis for women, it can be slightly different because we're so, and I know I was from personal experience whenever I was in hospital or talked to a GP about quite obvious symptoms of addictions were often passed off for mental health. Or irritable bowel syndrome. Like, I tried that a lot. I even almost got myself convinced to the GP that I had Crohn's disease at once, which I don't, and that's fucking awful to say out loud. But I was so desperate to be labelled as something else other than an addict.
Yeah.
And I think they are too, because they don't understand alcoholism because it's not something they're taught with. Like, it's a complete grey area for doctors who can't give you a pill to sort you out. I think for me, for women and men, when we go, if we go and ask for help or maybe seek advice, we're so used to being asked what's wrong.
Yeah.
You automatically think that it's a bad thing to be an addict and that then you shouldn't talk about it or ask for help. I think if more people are inclined to ask what's going on rather than what's wrong, then you've already kind of opened the doors. Whereas when somebody says to me, what's wrong, I'm shut. Like, I shut up. Like, my doors are shut. I'm in innovation and I'm saying, right, well, I'm not going to tell you that I drink 2 litres of vodka because you've just told me what's wrong. So subconsciously, I don't want to admit that. Whereas if somebody would have said to me, what's going on with you? I might have thought about that question more and actually answered it.
Yeah. I think for men, there's almost this idea, and I'm speaking for myself here, but this notion of not wanting to look weak, not wanting to ask for help, which is, it's not a great trait to have, but I know it's a thing that many men have. For women, there's almost this shame, especially when it comes to motherhood or feeling guilt, because of the impacts that it can have on our family. So, I mean, women face that different kind of stigma around addiction. Do you think the shame makes it harder for women to ask for help?
I mean, the thing is that I don't want to say, oh, well, the men don't have that. Of course they do. But I do think that as women, we're often told that we are, we're the housemaker, we're the ones that have to look after the children. And so if you were to admit that you've got an alcohol or drug dependency, you automatically think the kids are going to be taken away.
That's, yeah.
Like, that was definitely one of my main concerns for not asking for help. Like, what's going to happen to the children? And then, as soon as I did ask for help, actually, the first thing that happened was social services was called.
Yeah.
My kids weren't taken away. They evaluate the situation and they did a great job at doing so. But that is definite fear and being judged on the lack of being not a present mother rather than help for what I need.
Well, one of our previous participants recently said something that really rang true, and it was, women don't want to be told how to get sober. They want to be told how they can get sober without losing their children.
Yeah.
And I think that additional barrier there, when we see the statistics of only a third of women in treatment in terms of the numbers, especially for even our local service in Hull, there has to be a reason for that, and I do think that is it. And I kind of want to go back to what you were saying earlier, because you talked about, your children would come down and they'd, see the empty bottles of wine. Going back to just trying to put yourself in that mindset, how much do you think that impacted them at the time, or do you think they was almost quite shielded from it from your husband?
Just want to make me cry.
I don't. I genuinely don't. It's an interesting thing to kind of look, with 5 years under your belt. I guess it's how do you look back on that, and how do you feel about that now?
It's a tough one because they were young. Faith's 14 now, and AJ's 12. And they often say to me, you know, you weren't that bad when I do a meeting, for example. And like face like, you know, you've got to do that for the rest of your life. And then I explain it and she's cool with it, but she'll question it. And that's normal. But their effect definitely was evident when I went to rehab. To them, I left one day and didn't come back. So, sorry. Like, so there wasn't any, like, I didn't know I was going to go to rehab that quick. I didn't actually think I was going to go to rehab. I just left the house with my friend, took me away, and then I went to rehab. So I didn't say goodbye to the kids. They didn't really understand what was going on, and so I was away for like those 4 or 5 weeks. And for AJ especially, every time I left the house for a long time, he didn't know if I was coming home. So, I mean, yeah, there has to be a knock-on effect. Of course there would be.
The reason why I asked Michelle, and again, it is a harsh question, but it's so important in recovery to make amends and to learn to forgive yourself as well. And the reason I ask it is because I want to know, how have you learned to forgive yourself for those things in order to have like a fulfilling life and a fulfilling relationship with your children now as well?
I mean, if I'm being completely transparent, I don't think you ever really get rid of all guilt, obviously. I think it'd be kind of strange for me to say, oh, well, I don't blame myself for anything, you know? Like, I think that would be a bit odd, if I'm being honest. But, of course, with living amends, the way that the kids have turned out now and how amazing they are, and our relationship, you know, it's not perfect. Like, me and Faith battle every day. She's 14, you know. Teenager. And teenager. But what recovery has allowed me to do is just be so present, not the perfect mum, but be there for them even more so than what I would have done if I hadn't have gone through recovery. I think recovery and doing the steps and doing some work has really changed my perspective on all areas of life. Like, my husband says it all the time. He's not one of us. And he's like for him, he would benefit from doing some kind of step work and work on himself and inventory. And I think, you know, I'm not perfect. I don't get it right all the time, but I definitely have a much better attitude when it comes to reactions, because my reaction would be straight away before, and my reactions were very harsh. Whereas I think being less reactive has kind of made my children definitely trust me more. Yeah. My son knows that when I leave or I go away for a few days for work, I'm coming home. You know, and I think over time, kids' memories definitely do get a little bit more glazed. Yeah. Thank God.
I want to go back to the access to treatment, because I think people often look at stories like yours, and you've mentioned the Priory already, and it's interesting. I remember struggling with anxiety really bad, and I remember going to I went to a CBT counsellor, and I went in there and I almost thought they'd have a magic wand and be like, hey, you're fixed. And I think people have that idea of treatment. And obviously it's not. Treatment for drug dependency, alcohol dependency is very difficult. And if you're going through services, you've got to jump through the hoops. Detox, rehab is expensive. You've got to show a commitment there. And I think sometimes people look at stories like yours, and not just yours, but anyone within that celebrity, you know, sphere, and people that can go to the Priory, and it's like, well, she could go to the Priory. That's why she got better. But you said before that rehab got me clean, but the rooms keep me sober.
Yeah.
Does that challenge the idea that recovery can simply just be something that you can go out and buy?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. I think I definitely had that attitude. Like, I went in the Priory with heels and like a going out outfit, because I was like, this could be so rock and roll. Like, this could be so cool. Like, I'm like, Amy Winehouse came here, and you know, this is going to be amazing. And then it wasn't like that at all. It's a mental institution, you know.
I was going to say, give us some insight into the Priory as well, because I mean,
well, everything's taken away, obviously, and you go through medical checks at the beginning, and you sign that your husband can find out everything. And that was the first time he knew I had a cocaine addiction.
Oh wow!
So he was told by the doctors there. And it was, you know, like the first couple of weeks you're on like you're monitored. Everything's filmed. There's no curtains. There's no doors where the toilet is because of people committing suicide and hurting themselves and trying to get out. And it was like being back at university. You know, we learned about what addiction is. We learned what the steps were. We did a lot of sitting around, a lot of talking. And I felt really good at the end of the 4 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, great. I can live a life without drinking alcohol. And then I got home and it was like, fuck. Like, oh my God. Like they don't teach you in there how to cope with life. And yeah, it gave me my 28 days and that was amazing for me. I needed that detox. I needed that time. But it was after, when I got home, where the hard work started, for me anyway. You know, you're back to your normal life. You're back to the surroundings where you drank, you used, you go to, you know, you get out your house, you see the off license, you see the people, the children are doing your head in, the husband's got to work, so you're by yourself all day. And so everything's the way it was, but without your coping mechanism. And so you have to find another way to cope or things that help you cope. And for me, it was the rooms of CA. And I only learned about that briefly in rehab, that they're available. And then I remember when I came out around Denise Welsh, who's very open about her recovery. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel like I'm going insane. I need a drink. Like that feeling of like, I cannot breathe was straight away. Since I went out with Priory, it was like there. And she's like, you need to get yourself to a meeting. She said, face to face. I said, I can't. I'm so embarrassed. She said, well, just try online. And it was COVID. They were all online. So helpful, so amazing. Thank God they were online, because I don't think I would have went. And then I started going and went with a hat on, and I didn't have my camera on much. And then these girls started inboxing me, and I was like, oh yeah. What, you know, I was thinking, they want tickets for a show or something like that. And it was like, of course they don't like, they want to get rid of a terrifying drug habit too. And I just didn't think about it until it was explained to me that nobody gives a shit who you are. Like, addiction doesn't discriminate. Most of the people in fact, 99% of the people that are in the rooms with me are not ex-pop stars. They're not famous. They're not celebrities. They're normal people. And so I got brought right down to earth. My ego went, and I was just like, right, okay, I just need help and guidance. And so that's where I found my people.
We had Kevin Kennedy on the podcast, and he played Curly Watts in Coronation Street. And this was back on terrestrial TV, where there's 4 channels, and if you was on the telly back then, you was proper famous. And he shared a story about the first time he went to a detox or into a fellowship meeting, and he said he went in there and he said how humbling it was when nobody gave a fuck who he was. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
People don't care once you're in that space, do they?
No, and I find it so amazing that everyone's there of their own free will, and you're there, and nobody gets paid, and and people help people. Like, that blew my mind. Like, that a woman wanted to help me and not get anything out of it. It really blew my mind that there's women out there who are willing to give their time to somebody to help them like they were helped. And I just think that's amazing.
But
yeah.
Just to talk about, obviously, the specific women's health issues that you experienced. You described the early surgical menopause that became part of the story behind your addiction. Is there something that you wish every substance misuse service out there understood about the relationship between menopause, hormones, and women's recovery as well?
Oh gosh,
because it can be so misdiagnosed or misunderstood.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think menopause is so misunderstood and misdiagnosed, and like addiction, it actually kind of combines a lot of the time, because when you hit menopause, for those women who are premenopausal or in it, like you relate, you don't know you're really in it until you're in it. And then you question your mental health, and you question your sanity, and you're irritable, you're discontent, and you might go to the GP and they'll probably fob it off with anxiety. And then more than often we'll drink a bit too much because there's nothing else to do, or we're trying to find a release, and that's our little release. And actually drinking alcohol can make menopause symptoms worse, and then you're in this fucking awful cycle again and again. But there's a definite stigma and relationship between, women when it comes to mental health issues with menopause and addiction, and being fobbed off with, okay, it's anxiety, or maybe you need to do more exercise, and not actually looking at the problem.
Let's talk about recovery beyond abstinence, because obviously recovery is more than just simply stopping, drinking, stop taking substances, and I think people misunderstand that, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
We had someone recently talking about the differences between being in recovery and being in recovery, and being two very different things, which I thought was really interesting. But tell me, what does recovery actually give you now?
I mean, the best way that I can put it is that, like stop drinking and using was easy. It's the continued living without it. That's the hard bit. And recovery for me is being connected, knowing what my triggers are. Triggers, huge thing. My triggers are my kids, actually. And when I say that, I mean, like, when all else fails and you're just in that absolute sheer anger of, why can't they just do what you want them to do? Or, why can't they listen? How selfish, that. And it's just, like, I would have just went downstairs and had a bottle of wine. It's the simple things that are my triggers, not necessarily going to restaurants or seeing other people drink. It's those moments, having the ability to breathe and pause and not react. Learning that in recovery was huge for me.
What brings you joy now that alcohol never could bring you?
Gym. Yeah. I work out a lot. I force myself to be sociable, because sometimes I can't be arsed. A lot of the time I cannot be arsed. I just want to sit in the house and watch Netflix and drink copious amounts of Diet Coke or Red Bull, and I love my home comforts now. But I actually have to give myself a push, because also that's not a safe and healthy place to be either. And I make sure that I'm sociable with my mates, and we just do other things. I love food still, absolutely fucking love food. So we will go out to eat, and we'll go to the cinema, or I'll meet them at the gym, or I'll go for a run. And I've got dogs now. I've got 2 dogs, and they keep me very occupied. Good.
And Michelle, before we finish, if anyone's listened to our podcast series and you've experienced this twice before, I do like to finish, because we spoke about some heavy stuff today. I like to finish with 10 quick fire questions.
Okay.
Got to be as quick as you can with these.
Oh, shit.
Well. There you go.
I keep swearing. I'm so sorry.
My first one is, what's your favourite word? They know it.
Shit.
Least favourite word?
Oh, least favourite. Oh, I can't say it.
You can
it's
say
really
it.
bad. No, I don't want to.
Say it.
C-U-N-T.
Tell me something that excites you.
Something that excites me. Oh, burning more than 200 calories in a gym class.
What bores you or drains your energy?
Moaning.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, an email. I'm a bit weird.
I
love my emails. Yeah.
Probably my least favorite. What sound or noise do you hate?
When the washing machine's done.
Nice.
I hate it.
When do you feel most like yourself?
When I've had my shower at night and I'm in my PJs and I'm sitting on the sofa with the dogs lying next to me and they're all calm. We've got Netflix on, all of Ireland.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Ooh, I'd love to be an astronaut.
Nice. What profession would you not like to do?
Work with children.
Understandable. And lastly, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You did it!
Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on Believing People! And thank you, you guys have been a lovely, lovely audience. Honestly, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We are going to do a little Q&A as well. So if anybody has any specific questions like you'd like to ask Michelle, my colleague Robbie is going to be going around with a microphone. We've got about 10 minutes or so we can get a few questions in.
Hi, Michelle.
Hiya.
Hi. I just want to know, that day you met Katie Price, do you think if you didn't have met her that day, you wouldn't be where you are today?
Yeah, good question. I hope I would have had an encounter with somebody who was in recovery, but that's very wise and apt to think that I wouldn't be here today. Yeah, I know I was dying. Like, I got told I had weeks, and yeah, so quite possibly wouldn't be here today.
Thank you.
If you had the chance to go back and ask yourself a question when you were a teenager about your future and being a pop star, what advice would you give yourself?
Good one. I probably wouldn't have listened to it, but I think the best advice I would have given myself is do your best to shut out the noise. There's a lot of noise being in this industry. A lot of words were written about myself that I believed, and it definitely defined the way I felt about my body and how I treat it and my actions. The other girls in the band are really good at shutting that off, and I wasn't, so yeah, maybe that.
Hi, Michelle.
Hiya.
Are you applauded in your kind of showbiz world for speaking out and kind of being an advocate for somebody in recovery? Like,
Yeah.
How is that received?
If I knew it would be so greatly received, I would have probably got in recovery or asked for help way before I did. I was so convinced it would have been ill received and everything would have been taken away from me. But it's quite the opposite. Now, of course, it took time to gain people's trust or people to want to hire me for work, especially TV shows. But it actually brought a new sense of trust on me, actually. And it's been way better than I could ever imagine.
Hiya, Michelle.
Hiya.
Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Really got me. I'm alcoholic, cocaine addict, mother. But it's a bit of a mental healthy type one as well as your addictions. So during my addiction, I was tiny, really skinny, like put 4 stone on in my 3.5 years of sobriety. But now I'm starting perimenopause and this, that and the other. How did you cope up here? Because I'm really struggling. I can't even wear tight clothes. I feel disgusting. I hate what I see because alcohol and cocaine gave me this security blanket, and I was tiny, and I just keep looking back. I found my hot pants I wore for my 40th the other week.
Yeah.
They were size 6 and they were big on me then.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the fuck? But I miss it.
I understand.
Do you know what I mean?
I get you. And, you know, you can only say that in a room full of addicts. Like, I get it. Like, for me, I went up and down in my addictions. I was really blown up and swollen a lot of the time, and then I'd be skinny again. And so I understand. It makes perfect sense to me to be like, oh my God, I was that skinny. I want to be like that again. But we were so ill. We were so sick. We were going to die. So I remember Kate Moss once saying, and nothing tastes as good as being skinny, but actually, we would have died saying like that, because the only way to stay that skinny would be to continue what we were doing. And I think with menopause, it's just so important to get your HRT right. Oh my God, like HRT has saved me. It really has. I took a lot of fighting with my GP and had to then go privately as well in the end, because again, there's not a lot available. It's fucking awful out there. It really is. Trying to get testosterone is like a no-go unless you pay for it. It's shocking. It needs to change. But if there's anything I can say, and if you're able to do it, HRT is literally a lifesaver.
Hi, Michelle.
Hiya.
Thank you for sharing. It's been so inspiring, and well done on 5 years. My question is, do you have a mantra that keeps you going on your abstinence journey that keeps you strong?
I mean, I suppose I do the Serenity Prayer. I've got it tattooed just in case I forget, which I'm not gonna. I don't know why. Why do we do that? We always get things tattooed to remind ourselves, and like I know my kids' names. But yeah, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, because that applies to everything. I remember in early recovery, I'd say that a lot, and it was usually when I needed to breathe before reacting to the kids. But it's just says it all for me. You know, like quite often we want to change the way somebody else is with us, and we can't. And that was a lot of my, addictions was, it's your fault. You did this to me. How dare you? I drink because of you. And, it really is none of that.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
My name's Tim. Thank you for your story. I loved your honesty. I took a lot of strength from that. I'm someone who works for a peer-led recovery service, so everyone's lived experience of addiction. And I'd love to know, thinking about your own recovery journey, what was it that the professionals or the peers that you had interaction with all the different services that you went through, that made you feel truly understood rather than judged? And what can we as an audience learn from that?
When I was in the Priory, I didn't know this until after I left, that the counsellors were addicts. And so I thought that actually, had I known that, I might have opened up even more. I do think that when you're talking to somebody, it's to be relatable to that person. And so if I'm talking to somebody who isn't like me, I feel like I have to go on and convince them. Whereas if I'm talking to somebody who relates and who can participate in a conversation, then you're going to get more out of me and trust. Somebody who you feel you can trust, and non-judgy words. What have you done? Right, is a big no-no. Talk to me. Just a general conversation is just so much more helpful than direct questioning. But yeah, trust is huge.
Hi, Michelle. My question is, what advice would you give to other mums who are scared of asking for help because they're scared of losing their children?
That's one of my questions that got sent in as well.
Yeah.
So was that you?
No, it wasn't. I work with a specialist women's organisation.
Okay.
And yeah, it's something that's a big issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the beauty of not being a celebrity is that you can remain anonymous, right? And if you go and ask for help, ring the Samaritans. I know I've advised a lot of people to ring the Samaritans online, or likewise, that will point you in the right direction of getting advice on where you stand with that. Which is beyond my pay grade. I wouldn't know really what services are out there to help legal advice. But what I do know is that when it was found out that I was in a Priory and I was getting these things, the school had a duty to the call, and that obviously very much frightened us as a family. And I believe that the language that was used initially is scary, because they have to give you the worst case scenario. There is a chance that your children will be taken away, blah, blah, blah. And then you think the worst, but actually that's just, what's good to remember is that's just an automatic thing that would be sent out. I think the school were very, very helpful, very accommodating. Like I remember when Faith was going to school, the headmistress done her hair. So I think getting a good school, to work with the family is often a really, really good idea and quite warm and welcoming. I found that it wasn't that scary in the end. You can fantasize and dramatize everything in your head and think that this is going to be the worst case scenario, but actually people don't want to take your kids off you. The services don't want to have to do that. They will avoid that in any scenario if they can keep the kids there. I think there was never a point where I thought they were going to do it. They were looking at, are the kids happy and are they stable in the house? And that was never a question.
Thank you, Michelle. Been really interesting. I was interested in, you mentioned an addiction to cocaine and alcohol. So I get it. When you did your detox, they would have focused on both of those issues. I haven't said much about when you came out about the cocaine side of it. I wondered whether I went through AA, for example, but I wondered whether you went to NA or AA as well, or that sort of relationship between cocaine and alcohol after you came out, how that went.
Yeah, so I started off in AA because I fundamentally thought it was just alcohol. That was my main problem, because cocaine came along when I was drunk. And so I didn't quite understand that I was a coke addict to begin with. And then I think when I was in AA for a few weeks, I think I was sharing my story, and somebody had mentioned, you might quite like CA, and I hadn't even heard of it. I didn't even know there was a CA or an NA or an OA. And so I looked into it, and then I went to one, and I found my people. For me, I related more to both sides of the story. And what I liked about CA is that it was, it's anything really. Any addiction is welcome there. And I felt with AA, I couldn't quite share my story knowing that I was actually a cocaine addict as well.
Thank you. Can we have a big round of applause for Michelle? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Believe in People podcast, we'd love for you to share it with others who might find it meaningful. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leaving a review will help us reach more people and continue challenging stigma around addiction and recovery. For additional resources, insights and updates, explore the links in this episode description. And to learn more about our mission and hear more incredible stories, you can visit us directly at believeinpeoplepodcast.com. peoplepodcast.com. 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 peoplepodcast.com.